to be here. Needless to say, we're all thinking about how we re-envision the future. And so what we need to do is really think about how people feel, certainly, how work happens, how we rethink spaces, and how we plan for the future in this absolutely unprecedented time. So at Cushman and Wakefield, we actually pivoted our total workplace team to think about things differently. We focused on learning through our experience per square foot diagnostic tool. We've focused on sharing our findings with the industry through our thought leadership. And we focused on developing new strategies with some of our best clients, and some of those people are sitting in the room here. But now on this panel, what we really want to do is get into some real specifics. So this is a time to make sure you have pen and paper or other documenting tool in hand, because I've asked each of our panelists to focus on real details and facts. What do they know? What did they learn? And what are they doing going forward here is really what we're going to talk about. And so this is a good time to take some notes and definitely try some of these things at home if you can. This is a deep dive learning opportunity. So we've organised our thoughts into a few themes that we're going to go through sequentially. It's going to be rapid fire. I've asked them all to keep their comments as succinct as they can, but still get the message across so that we can get through a whole lot of stuff together here in the next few minutes. We'll touch on safety and health. There's been a lot of conversation about vaccination in the hallways, so we'll pick up a couple of comments on that. We're going to talk about employee sentiment. We'll talk also about technologies in the workplace, culture that affects work, and the ecosystem, meaning all of the spaces. We won't be dwelling very much on that. There's been other comments on that elsewhere, but we will touch on it at the end. So in order to get acquainted with these organisations and with these folks, I've asked each one of them to introduce their portfolio, the number of people, the number of countries, etc., that they're in. So Will, why don't you kick us off with that?
Thank you. I'm Will Monahan. I lead global corporate real estate at Willis Towers Watson. We are a large insurance broking and risk consulting company. We have about 50,000 people in about 400 offices and 7 million square feet, so we probably have an office in every city that you could think of. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Brian Parker with PwC, professional services firm. In my portfolio, I'm responsible for the US, Mexico, and then some of our US operations in India and Shanghai. We have about 6 million square feet in that portfolio. Counts for about 60,000 employees, which is about 20% of our global population. And right now we have like 100 leases. I was just showing them my dashboard. I checked. We went up by 3 since I've been here. I don't know what happened. And yeah, so.
Great. I'm Kari Buck. I'm, I guess, the little girl on the panel here. I come from Cruz. We're an 100% electric autonomous vehicle company based out of San Francisco, but we are in Seattle, Munich, and now Dubai as well, and launching a partnership with Walmart in the Phoenix market. We've got about 19 different sites. They run the gamut from agile all the way to large office R&D spaces, and we're really about 3,000 employees and contractors together. And we really haven't stopped operations at a lot of our sites with COVID because we have drivers and we have frontline workers who have been delivering in our automobiles in San Francisco.
Great, thank you. So Kari, let's actually start with you. Safety and the confidence of people coming back to work. Clearly your industry is focused on safety. So tell us a little bit about what you did at the very beginning and how that contrasts to how you're approaching safety and people in the workplace today.
Yeah, absolutely. We are obviously safety, and being better than a human driver is so core to our business that safety in EH&S and safety with our employees, our vendors, our contractors was really important. So day one, week one in March of last year, we pulled together a crisis management team comprising legal, people, real estate, EH&S, and then some of our major businesses, so our operations and our hardware engineers who had to be on site. So April, couple months went by, we were still continuing to operate. We're in San Francisco, so it was locked down, but never stopped providing food services because you need to encourage your frontline workers to come in. And this time last year, we were raring to go to bring everybody back, had engineering leadership really supporting it 3 days a week. We were gung-ho, and then kind of the first spike of kind of the new COVID came back, and we have been in a bit of a holding pattern, bringing people back this summer, and we're doing things in 3 phases. So summer, anyone who wanted to come back could come back, and by October, everyone had to be vaccinated to come back, including our janitors. So every single person on site right now, visitor, FTE, contractor, is fully vaccinated, uploaded into the system, and that's become really core to encouraging people to come back. And like we were talking or listening to, the on-site is the new off-site, and we want to encourage people to come back, but we also want them to feel safe. So we've got testing if you want it. Anyone can get tested every single day if they choose to, and that's been a large expense, but really has paid dividends.
Great. Will, what's happening particularly with vaccinations at Willis Towers Watson?
So we're a federal contractor, so we have to follow the law in terms of what the new administration has rolled out. So we are requiring vaccinations for all of our North America employees on that basis, whether you're in the office or not. So it's been a bit of a minefield for our HR department, but it's the law and that's the way we're going, and that's what we're doing. We're trying to find accommodations for some of the people who don't want it.
Yeah, great. That brings up the idea of employee sentiment and how people are feeling and dealing with things related to work. So, Brian, we know PwC is deeply committed to data-driven decision-making. So, what's been done to understand your employee sentiment over the time?
Yeah, right during the sort of initial pandemic, we realized things are going to change. And we knew things were going to change even before that. But we spent some time, so we have 2 real estate, if you will, or workforce groups. One is the client-facing, and I have one of my colleagues that are here today that does the client-facing, and I'm internal. And internally with the real estate department, we went out immediately and said, we're going to practice what we preach to our clients, and we're going to conduct focus groups, interviews, and really get to know what our people want. Talk about the future, post-pandemic, let's talk about what you want. So everything that we have done during the lockdown, including making some major changes in our major market offices, invested some capital there, ripped out WorkSpaces, was a direct result out of what our people were telling us. And they were telling us from the experience they had with some of the other spaces that we had designed previously, where they had been in an office and say, hey, that 21st floor in 300 Madison, we want something like that in LA. And we would respond to that. So not only did we do that internally with our real estate team, but then we took our consulting side, the Workforce of the Future, and they also conducted additional reviews. So I was having a conversation earlier with somebody, and we're talking about real estate has a seat at the table right now in a different way. We were always at the table, but it was about capital investment. Sure. And now the focus much more is on how do we meet our people's needs, and it's a great place to be right now.
Did you use that data and learning to form personas or?
We did.
Categorize folks?
So we did micro and macro personas. So in my group, we did a lot of micro personas about what we were hearing, the reoccurring themes of people coming into the office, and they fit into one of about 6 different personas that we developed, which really developed in the way that we would design our space. We've gone from, in our new space development, it's 80% of it is collaborative, with only about 10% of it being heads down and the other 10 administrative. And then that developed even more in informing our leadership on sort of the macro personas of people being 100% virtual. We offered that to our employees. Being flex, where you come in a couple times a day, or in person.
Okay. Will, do you have personas at Willis Towers Watson?
We have a spectrum of personas. We decided for our workforce not to tag anyone into an individual you come in the office this many days, because in our organization it just changes weekly, by employee. So we have a spectrum, and we do believe in, it'll average out, but we don't think if someone says, okay, you're in the category of being in twice a week or 3 times a week, and if that individual has to be in more, they're just going to come in more. So we've kind of kept it. We're not tagging individuals, but we do sort of say there is a spectrum, and most of our employees fall into this category. Yeah. And we're just trying to be prepared for when everyone comes in whenever they want. How do we operationalize that?
Sure. Brian, that makes me think, is there a strictness about the personas associated with at PwC? Can somebody move from one to the other with or without permission, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, if you've become a virtual persona, right, we're not going to bar you from coming into the office. You can come into the office. What's going to be interesting to see over the course of the next few months is how much do they really follow that persona, right? Mm-hmm. So it's that permission given, which is really mostly their own decision, right? There are some things, there's some in-person that, you can't do that job unless you're in the office. But it really was trusting our people to make the right decision for how they want to work. Now, it might also mean that we reassigned you to a different client if your client required you to come in and you don't want to, that kind of thing.
Right.
But yeah, we're not forcing, we're also not saying, well, you said you're going to come in 3 days a week and you've only come in 2.
Sure. And so how is that being supported with your technologies?
So we have, like many organizations, we have all sorts of great technologies, some sensor data, but right now, one of the benefits to us, our coming back to office, was the creation of our app that we have at PwC called Astro, which is really, you had to go into it to get your initial pass to come back during that COVID time. We've continued to build on that platform. So we have some predictability. We can see what the future is a little bit. Obviously, people don't plan out that far. But our technology, we're able to track where people are. I was joking with you guys over there. I pulled up one of my dashboards. I mean, I can tell you how many people are in the New York office right now and where they're sitting.
And as we think about work, did your people have all of the tools they needed to be mobile before COVID, or did you have to re-kit people?
So not so much re-kit. We've been very mobile at PwC for a very long time. Everybody comes in, you get a laptop, you get a cell phone. But what we did do is we started changing some of the technology in the office. We introduced the Cisco Desk Pro into a lot of our individual smaller office spaces that people can use for hybrid meetings. And I have a sandbox that I will call in the Tampa office that I've been experimenting with technologies and layouts and that sort of thing as well. But we gave a stipend. People could do whatever they wanted with it. But we were fairly mobile to begin with our laptop and cell phones.
Yeah. What happened at Willis Towers Watson?
We were
stipend or not stipend?
We haven't done. We've been talking about it. I mean, my personal belief is give someone a stipend and let them do whatever they want with it as an incentive to work from home more. But our people really want to work from home. We have, by request, offered some kit at home. Whether it's a chair or a desk. One of the most popular items is a poly-sync speakerphone, so you just don't have to sit with your headphones on all day. But again, not everyone wants it, so we just say if you want it, put in a request. So, yeah, I mean, we I think in the future, I think the stipend is the way to go. We'll recommend, here's where you buy a desk, here's where you buy a chair, here's where you can buy some technology. But in the end of the day, I think they should do whatever they want with it. Yeah. Because not everyone wants a home setup.
Sure. Kari, do you have stipends?
We did. We gave $1,000 stipend in the summer of last year, and then every new employee gets that same stipend. And then we offer a $75 per paycheck health and wellness stipend as well, so that people, things you decide you need another monitor and you want to save up for it. But we're empowering people to choose to use it on whatever they want. But we have partnered with a lot of the furniture companies to give it a small discount and recommend ergo chairs. Not every chair that says ergo on Amazon is actually appropriate. So.
And that's just a free to spend as you wish.
Free to spend.
$75 per paycheck.
Yep. Free to spend as you wish.
Great. Awesome.
It's been a big selling feature. People share, and there's a Slack channel about how people use their health and wellness.
Fantastic.
I think that's the way to go.
Yeah, I agree. And we've heard some similar thoughts earlier today. That makes us think then about culture. What kind of organization is this that supports its people this way? It's a hot topic on everybody's mind, and if we don't all come back, particularly the question is, well, what's going to happen to our culture? So let's dig into that a little bit. Brian, PwC has been in the press with the new equation. What does that mean? Sounds like you're reinventing your culture. Is that the case?
It is. We reinventing or expanding on our culture.
Okay.
I love that it happened during this time, that we recognized this was a monumental shift and that it required a shift in the culture as well. So PwC launched the new equation. Go Google that, watch the video, you'll be inspired. It gets me going every day when I feel like I need a little inspiration. But as part of that, there was a really big focus on operating from the center. So we are making decisions from the center, and a real big focus on one firm attitude and respecting the opinions and the input from everyone. So we got rid of our traditional lines of service silos. We operate under two segments now, trust and consulting, and the new equation is they say 1 + 1 = 2, but what do you do with that math after? And that's what the new equation is about.
Great. So reorganize the entire organization as a result of COVID.
I won't say they did it because of COVID.
Okay.
The timing just happened. And so I think it was, you don't ever want to not take advantage of a catastrophe.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a Chinese saying to that effect,
yes.
Right? What about this idea of, helping enable people to be more effective in this new way? Are there some new tools and things that have been introduced?
There are. So again, we were doing some of this beforehand, but it really was a great opportunity to push with our people. So I mentioned some of the things that we've done with technology, with our development inside, with apps and things like that. The other thing that we have done very successfully is what we call the difference makers. So we have an entire team that, I heard earlier today people talking about being intentional about your meetings. We have the ability to upskill our people. Even our meeting and events folks have a different upskill now. But the difference makers are these pre-packaged, if you will, ready to go ways to conduct meetings, ways to build build your team confidence and that sort of thing. And it's fantastic. I mean, it literally, like, you go in and you say, what is it I'm trying to do today? And I did one a couple weeks ago. I was trying to road map out the next 30, 90, 60 days, or 30, 90, 120 days of a project. And I went, plugged that in, gave me some suggestions. It went into my calendar, invited everybody to it. And they said, here's what we're going to do. There's a Jamboard ready. Here's the presentation. And I tagged someone to be a facilitator. And it was a very intentional meeting with a great outcome.
So that's a really key sort of cultural commitment. Where was that created in the organization? Where does that live? Who did that? Yeah,
so we did that initially quite a bit with our clients, right? Mm-hmm. That was developed there. But it's in our consulting side, our BTX side, and the library just continues to grow and grow and grow. A lot of our stuff is sort of groupthink and people, crowdsourcing, yeah. And people contributing to it. So it's been a fantastic resource to have, and we didn't have to do a heavy lift. We've added some more, but there was a lot of it that was already there.
Yeah. So that's kind of a self-serve, self-upskill program. Kari, what about at Cruz? What's the culture like there? I mean, obviously at the cutting edge of its industry
evolving.
type, and managing through this time with everybody still being involved in work and in the office. What's happened? How have you kept people informed?
Absolutely. So we, prior to COVID, were very much one-to-one desk. If you weren't in the office, the perception was you weren't working, kind of an old school mentality almost, and the spaces had to encourage people to feel like they wanted to come in. But during COVID, we've doubled down as a people team, as a real estate team, and as a legal and internal comms team have really doubled down on psychological safety and took advantage of the things that were core to our culture and kept them going. So for instance, we have a 3-day, everyone's required to do 3 days of ignition onboard training, then engineers get another 2. So you get the first 5 days that you are a cruiser, you get culture, every element of the business is an education piece to you. And that was done in a training room on site prior to, and so we very quickly had to figure out how do we have the tools to then, we were Google format, we switched to Zoom so that people could interact with each other, we could have breakout rooms immediately because it's every 2 weeks, you can't wait for the buildings to open. So that's something that we've kept consistency, and every Monday, actually happening right now, we do all hands. So half an hour prior to COVID, it was all about, we're 80% engineers, software engineers, hardware engineers. They're really driving the innovation. All of our all hands were focused on what are those engineering metrics with COVID, because you can't have those water cooler or fancy barista meetings to talk to G&A or to product. We started to introduce more and more information outside of just engineering. So what is the product team doing? What is internal comms? How is legal, government affairs? All these things that people were hungry for, we kept a weekly cadence and expanded upon what that was to try and keep the culture and for everyone to understand, yes, it's engineering driven, but everybody as an ecosystem is required. So it's been really interesting, the asynchronous and synchronous communication styles that we have. I mean, we have Slack, we have email. Now that we're in Dubai and we're in Munich through acquisition, it's not just San Francisco centric or California West Coast centric anymore, and we're having to adapt. So not only was COVID something that forced us out of the physical spaces, but we then became global during this pandemic. And one of the great things I was talking to, internal comms now has kind of an outsized, internal and external, outsized role in this. Our chief legal officer is absolutely passionate about safety, and former ambassador loves to kind of rally the troops. And so he very much wanted to make sure every week there was some piece of information from the C-suite. And he'll send Slacks. There's a great Edelman article that came out in January that says people trust businesses 60% more than they trust the government. So we felt like as an organization, whether it be workplace or EH&S or COVID, that we had to communicate something, and we had to communicate early and often, and that has been a driving force. And so he's our Dr. Fauci of sorts, and people trust him, and he's created a space that helps with the psychological safety, and people will Slack him back to agree or disagree, and that's totally fine, but he's very unalarming. So he plays a really critical role, and I think understanding that is internal communications and the voice of, and the shift and the voice of the employees and what they care about, not only just in their workplace, but in major events that are happening. We over-communicated across the board, and I think it's paying dividends now.
And in that communication, is that sort of spoken of as this is a symbol of the culture of our company? Does that word get used? Yeah, and it actually is something that has been created and kind of foundationally solidified through COVID, because you have to over-communicate when you don't have that interaction. You don't run into a peer, you don't hear the chit-chat.
things are much more intentional than they used to be. I have noticed the shift, and it's kind of fun because we're tracking from an R&D company to a commercial company, and we're growing up as an organization and realizing all of that. We're not a startup anymore. We really need to set the ground rules, and we need to double down on personas, and we need to partner with our business units, and a lot has happened in this time that I think would not have happened had we not been forced into this situation. So, it's a little bit of kismet and seeing the silver lining, but it has encouraged our culture to kind of foster beyond what it was.
Fabulous, thank you. So let's move on to another idea here, and that's the idea of the ecosystem, and that meaning that the hybrid workforce has multiple places where they can do their best work. In some cases that might mean multiple locations, in others it might just mean multiple settings within the work environment. So Will, you didn't mention it before, but I know that you've said to me before that about a third of your sites have less than 20 people in them. So given that you now have a sort of new approach to flexibility there, are you thinking about flex space, co-working type solutions for those sites? What's happening there?
Yeah, I mean, I said before, we have a very distributed office network. And so theoretically, it should be very easy for our teams to hire from wherever. We have 400 offices all over the place. A lot of those offices are small, and it's always been a thorn in our side managing these small offices that generally aren't used that much. And so we've been evolving our small offices, and I think our end game, we'd like to see our smaller offices just be a space on demand model where they have access to however many flexible spaces there are in a market, and they can book a desk or a meeting room when they need it. Right. It's a huge change for some of our people, but it started out a decade ago as a traditional office. It moved on to Regis's, it moved on to WeWork, and now we're like, well, why don't you just book the space for when you need it? So we're piloting that a little bit. We've also have a lot more of our internal stakeholders willing to try, a larger office, full floor enterprise co-working solutions that we could customize a bit. That's been very successful. We always, when we looked at a co-working space, it always looked great, but when you got to the actual space that your team was going to sit in, it was just terrible. And so we found that the full floor, half floor enterprise solutions work really well for us. So it's finding the niche of what works for your people, I think. Yeah. And there's some innovations in that space too, some really different types of spaces opening now too, right? Oh, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that we've never been able to figure out is our suburban offices. There's no infrastructure. And so we're seeing a lot more of these co-working companies dip their feet into the suburbs. Like Saks Works is something that we're really interested in. We have a lot of offices where there used to be an old Lord & Taylor or a Saks. And so we've been partnering with Saks Works to say, hey, where are you opening up next? Right. And it's a small program now, but I think there's something there. Yeah, absolutely. In relation to supporting the hybrid workforce when they're not in the office, I've been thinking a lot about all of these kinds of retail facilities, some of which, of course, are boarded up or otherwise. But are any of the others of you thinking about the kind of opportunities that these can present us? These little pockets of space all over the country. Yeah. So recently in Sarasota, Florida, we have a small little tax practice there that needed some space. And when you say small, how small? Oh, it was 20, 30 people. Okay. And when we were out looking at the traditional space that's available in Sarasota, it was okay. And our broker took us and showed us a Lakewood Ranch was a developed community there in Sarasota. Very nice golf course, kind of looks like this area. But it was the sort of show home / leasing office / demo suite? Yeah, demo suite. So it was very residential in its look and feel. And we said, this works. This is perfect for us. And that's what we moved them into. Now they absolutely love it. They've got verandas and they've got, it is a totally different environment. We did very little actual work to it. It was like a carpet and paint, and that was it. And
it's a great space. But we have some other spaces too in shopping malls. We have Acceleration Center in Columbia, South Carolina. I think they're in an old Sears space. And we acquired a company. They had already been in a mall in Hollandale, Florida. And then we expanded even more to another space in the mall. It's an outdoor mall, really nice. But yeah, we're in some unusual spots.
How many people are there?
At the Hollandale office.
How big is that?
Yeah, that's probably about 200 people. And actually, we've now consolidated all of our that South Florida market into that office. So we closed our Miami office and they're in Hollandale. The big attraction in Hollandale was our experience center where we brought clients into. So there's a great, you got all the restaurants, you got the hotels, ready to go.
And speaking of such things, you've got parking too, right?
Yeah,
at a shopping
absolutely.
mall, that's something there in abundance, which makes us then think about commutes and how we support the hybrid workforce by, being where they are. Yeah. Kari, you're in the business of commutes.
We are. We're very mindful of it. We actually doubled down on real estate and taking on space. We just signed a lease capitalizing on the soft market in Sunnyvale. And it's plug and play. We're, cruisifying it some, but realized that our engineers had moved kind of out of the city into the suburbs, and through our twice yearly surveying, the number one thing that people were worried about was their commute. People didn't want to, more so than putting on pants, it was all about the commute. And so we decided to take, it's a 3-year lease. We're going to beta test it. We're going to change out, add a bunch more spaces for collaboration and phone booths, and we're going to test it out and see, is it truly people just want their 5-minute commute into the Silicon Valley market, and then maybe in a couple years we can downsize in what hopes to be a better market in the city. But commuting, absolutely. And within the day or two that we asked how many people wanted to come, of the 1,600 engineers, 300 immediately said they would be there 3 days a week and commit. So proof is in the pudding. They do actually, they want it. And again, parking, walk to the Caltrain is really important.
Yeah, fantastic, very responsive there.
I think there's so many offerings coming out. I mean, I was talking to a company, and like I said, the infrastructure is not there, but there's a company called Daybase that's tapping into, do you want to offer a third space, membership to some of your employees that might necessarily not want to be at home, but just want to use something else once a week or once every 2 weeks?
Yeah. So let's dig a little further into, the space solutions that work for people. That's one of them, certainly. Well, what are you doing with your space? You've got lots of it.
Yeah, we've got lots of space. I mean,
Have you got the budget to make changes there?
I mean, we don't want to make any large structural changes. One thing I do think we are thinking about is we have a lot of desks, like everyone, and one of the easiest things to do is replace those desks with other types of furniture that might facilitate more collaboration. We're certainly pushing people to do their focus work as much as they can at home, and for our employee base, that works really well. I think we have everything from insurance brokers to actuaries, and actuaries actually work very good at home because they're looking at big data. And so we're thinking about that. We are thinking about little nuances such as when you're collaborating in the office and then you have 2 minutes to go onto a Teams call. What does that transition look like? Like, do you run to a room? Running to an open plan desk to do a video call just doesn't really work very well. So we're thinking about that transition. We're thinking of stuff. We don't want to do anything, like most of us here, we don't know what the new patterns are going to be. So to make any huge investments, we're erring more towards the side of let's get rid of as much property as we can, and if the pendulum swings the other way, we could always buy more. And I think there'll be more and more products that you could buy off the shelf over the next few years.
So that kind of swing, create savings, and then reinvest if you feel the need to.
See how patterns emerge.
Yeah, Brian, what's happening at PwC?
Yeah, very similar. We took advantage of people not being in the office and replaced workstations with more collaborative furniture. We listened to our people, and actually some of it wasn't so much changing the furniture so much, it was how you access that space. So, we, like many, had traditional bench seating workstations, and the solution that they wanted was, we just want to make one reservation for our team to come and use this entire table and just take the screens down, leave the monitors. Brilliant. Why didn't I think of that? And that's what we did in some of our spaces as well. So we've had a lot of opportunity to make some of those collaborative changes. We also have been very fortunate that we have dedicated space to test these things out, right? So I have a space in Tampa that I have flexible furniture in there. I can bring furniture in there. I have a pretty nice budget they gave me this year to test things out. And we've collaborated with our IT department and others on just what are we going to do in the future and how are we going to make these things? I mean, you come in one day and the space looks one way and the next day it's completely different.
Did you tell me you have no dedicated seats or offices for anyone anymore? Did I understand that correctly?
There are,
or is it just in your new builds?
No, there are no dedicated offices or workspaces for anyone except for a few that sign the paycheck. But yeah, we've been on that journey for a long time. So we've been doing hoteling for nearly 20 years. But in the course of the last 2 or 3 years, we completely got away from residential hoteling, as we would call it.
Right.
And during the COVID, we got everybody on board and said, not only did we do that, we took half of our enclosed offices that were for partners and directors and threw them back into the mix for collaboration and teaming. So they're not even reserved as an individual space anymore.
Right.
They had that mix of an environment in there and technology, and we said, let everybody access it.
Yeah, yeah. And what about the attitude to invest in the physical environment? Is PwC holding its pennies tightly or giving you some leeway there?
No, they are giving us some leeway. Again, really appreciate where we are in the firm, recognizing this is a new equation. It's a new chapter, and it's going to take some investment to do that. Really appreciate our leadership's commitment to failing fast, right? I'm not, in the past I felt like they would have said, all right, by X date, I want you to come up with a solution. And right now they're like, here's some space and money, go figure this out, come back to us. And anytime we've asked, they've given us what we needed.
Kari, for last comment for you in this round before we end up with a quick summary. Lots of spending money at Cruz?
We're pre-revenue. We're well-funded, have some really good partners and investors, but we're still pre-revenue, and so the dollars go to the things that matter. We have benefited from being very long on space that has a lot of collaboration already built into it. And so we're investing and focusing on spaces for R&D and pushing the envelope there on what we can do. Heating, we don't need one-to-one seating. Engineers can work in their hardware labs. So the investment is going to that, and then our commercialization, our fleet. And there has been an acknowledgement that as we start to come back and see our Cruz Meets organization, which is our on-site support team, that we can tweak, and we put some dollars in the budget, but we haven't in a big way needed to yet, and we're going to beta test in Sunnyvale.
Fantastic. All right then, let's do a quick run through here. One question for you all, I think I can hear tummy rumbling from the audience here. One phrase, what are we going to see in 2022 from your organizations? What are you hanging your hat on for the new year? Will?
I'll use the phrase that our CEO or someone came up with in the company. It's plan for your work for your day. So, we've been so successful.
Plan for your work for your day?
Yeah, so we've been so successful in terms of our results over the past 7 quarters that it's been a culture shift that we could have never imagined, and it just happened. And we don't know if it's because people are better at home or they're working differently, and we're more okay. Let's just keep doing this until it changes, and if it changes, we'll address it as and when.
Great. Brian, you got a catchphrase?
I'm going to steal it from the new equation, which is my team now has adopted this as our mission too, is to support and create a passionate community of solvers who come together in unexpected ways. So we are, like the TV show Survivor, we are expecting the unexpected, or is that Big Brother? I don't know, one of them. But totally embracing that and really creating a community of solvers.
Great.
I'd say stay flexible, listen to your people. We were very much people will come back this time last year, and now we're a voice of the customer. That's been a major shift, and we're bringing back all the amenities, so if people want to come back, it's a space that they want to come back to.
Great. Thank you all for sharing with us.
Can I just say one thing before
Yes,
we close? You have done a fantastic job with this, but what you don't know, she broke her glasses yesterday. And she is giving Sally Jesse Raphael realness up here on this panel. So, thank you.
$25 from the corner store around there. Thank you. Jason, over to you.
Thank you all for sharing really wonderful stuff, and I hope you guys got a lot out of that. And you made an allusion to Tummy's grumbling, so we'll head up. But before we do, let's give them one more round of applause.